Good afternoon, everyone. It is good to see you all in person, not on Zoom. It is really good to have you all here. Welcome to the 2021 State of the City Address featuring Mayor Bob Burns and City Administrator Sharon Hansen. For those that do not know who I am, my name is Brad Gerhut, President for your chamber. I'd like to first acknowledge our sponsors for today's program. First off, our corporate sponsors, Avera Marshall, Schwann's Company, Schwann's Home Delivery, Bremer Bank, Wells Fargo, the City of Marshall, Ralco and True Shrimp, U.S. Bank, and Southwest Minnesota State University. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsors, Eco Water Systems, Huffman and Brobst, Henley Printing, Action Manufacturing, Everspring Inn and Suites, and Northwest Partners. Thank you for your support on this event. With the representatives from all these sponsors, please stand and be recognized. I also want to recognize some of the non-city elected officials in the room, as the city officials will get recognized, I'm sure, during their presentations. A short wave will do as you hear your name. School board members Bill Mosel and Aaron Zimmer, and County Commissioner Gary Crowley and Sheriff Eric Wallen. Before we proceed any further, I ask that you rise, and if you're able, for the singing of the national anthem by Marshall Fire Chief Quentin Brunsvold.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land and of the free, and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Quentin. So again, thank you for attending the 2021 State of the City Address, which is the third one that Marshall has hosted. In fact, this event last year might have been one of the last larger events that you've attended since March 4th of last year, when the city rolled out the new branding. The Chamber is confident that we can hold an event of this size in a safe manner, and we encourage you all to help us to do just that. The Chamber and the City of Marshall have one thing in common, and that is we are in it together to help promote the city, and what a great opportunity to do that with the State of the City Address. The State of the City is an opportunity for the city to be transparent with the business community about everything that is going on. This last year sure has been a year to remember, in some cases forget, but I promise you will walk away today hearing good information about the great city that we live and or work in. And as someone told me after the very first State of the City in 2019, I wanted to stay and hear more. Okay. Enough for me. Let's introduce our presenters. I'd like to introduce Mayor Bob Burns and City Administrator Sharon Hansen. Mayor Burns is serving his 9th term as mayor, and prior to that served 6 years as council member, so he started at age 10. Mayor Burns has been a Marshall resident. Did one of you guys turn that on? Mayor Burns has been a Marshall resident since 1979. In 2019, Bob retired from a 40-year career with the University of Minnesota Extension, where he served as statewide director of operations. He returned to the University of Minnesota in January of this year to fill an interim regional extension director. He also serves on Highway 23 Coalition of Board of Directors and chair of the MnDOT District and Area Transportation Partnership. Sharon Hansen has been with the City of Marshall now since late 2017. In fact, I think it was right before the pheasant openers, right around the time where you started. Since she started, the city has initiated organizational structure changes to community planning, finance, and EDA, strategic plan development, and adoption, branding, launch, and implementation, renovation, and construction of City Hall, and assisted with one major pandemic response. Please welcome Mayor Bob Burns and the City of Marshall Administrator Sharon Hansen.
Okay, maybe I should have done that before we came up here. Can everyone hear okay? Okay, thank you, and thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Sharon, for all the prep that you've done. As always, Sharon has done a lot of preparation and has put some pressure on me to actually look at the presentation, well, last Friday already. So I've done some prep also. Before we really get started, though, let me just recognize a few people. Certainly, we're here at Southwest Minnesota State University, and as we all know, this is a blessing that we are in a community with a four-year institution of higher education. So thank you for SMSU for hosting us, and a little later in the presentation, we'll also talk about how they've helped us out in the temporary location for our city offices. So I'll recognize Deb Kirkhart and Bill Mulso as representatives of SMSU. President Kumara could not be here today. His son is graduating from medical school this week. So otherwise he would have been here. So thank you to SMSU. Okay, with that, we'll move into the presentation. There's probably a lot of people that we can recognize, and certainly everybody that's here is important. But I do want to recognize the Marshall City Council. Marshall City Council has not met in person since the second Tuesday of March, and since that time has met by distance and has really participated well and has accomplished a lot over the past year. So let me recognize two of the city council members that are here, Mr. Craig Schaefer and council member Jim Lazinski, that are here. So let's recognize them. Go ahead.
And I would also like to recognize my staff. Of course, they're the brains and the brawn of the organization. And if I could just have them stand, and let's give them a round of applause as well.
Maybe just a quick check-in, Sharon. There's a little bit of buzz here. Is that because you're too close here? Or?
I wonder if I'm too close to this, but...
Okay. So Alex, you can tell us if we need to do something different.
Maybe it's better now. So we're good.
Okay. Well, good.
So we haven't rehearsed, so we may kind of look at each other and wonder who's supposed to speak first, but we're going to take a little look back at 2020, and then we're going to talk about some of our upcoming projects and briefly conclude it with, we're going to have a video as well, and then we'll conclude our presentation. The one thing I want to mention about this slide is, if you can see it, I think it has the world in the background. And one of the things I think about 2020 is, with COVID, fortunately or unfortunately, it really did connect us with the rest of the world. What we were experiencing in Marshall was it being experienced by every single community across the globe. And again, it maybe wasn't something we want to be connected with, but a global pandemic, and a lot of work was done last year on that.
So we could focus on a lot of the challenges that all of us face with the pandemic, but there was also some positive things that happened too. And we will talk about some of those challenges as we go through. But I think it's always good to recognize the positive things that have happened. I mean, there was positive headlines that recognized Marshall really throughout the country and even beyond. There was, and here's a few of them, the activity with the PPP loans, and those in the room that are lenders were very, very active, and that really did help out our business community. Certainly the Schwann's Home Delivery was positioned absolutely correctly to help out people that needed to be quarantined, needed to be at home, but still needed to consume quality foods. And of course, the Fairbanks Ice Dogs relocated because they were in the situation that for their games, they would have had to quarantine when they were leaving Alaska and then come back and forth. So they needed to relocate to a community in the lower 48. They chose Marshall. They chose Marshall not only because of some of the personal connections that some of their players had, for example, Mason Plant, but also because we have a quality facility. In fact, they have said that the video feed that goes back to the their arena in Fairbanks was very quality. And in fact, I got a nice thank you note from the mayor of Fairbanks, Alaska, stating exactly that.
I don't have much to add to that, except for that our Convention Visitors Bureau did a great job with the Ice Dogs, and especially the challenging year that they had in tourism and visitors and things like that, and really appreciated their partnership with our post-COVID work, and then of course the Ice Dogs. Marshall Cares Grant, that was the infusion of federal money that we got in mid-year 2020. We just hired our new EDA director at the beginning of the year, and she got baptized by fire by passing out $500,000 worth of federal funding. And the county itself, I want to give a nod to them because they received a little over $2 million, and they did a great job distributing out those funds, not only in the city but throughout the county as well. And you know, here we focus a lot on the federal funding, but whenever you visited a downtown business, or maybe you did take out a restaurant, the community did a fantastic job supporting our local businesses, and it really kept our main street and the rest of our business community thriving. So do want to give a nod to them as well.
And there was if we did advance the slide, there was a lot of activity that the city had with response to the COVID. And a year ago we were dealing with uncertainty, so we had almost daily and sometimes more frequent meetings. Our goal as the city was a continuity of our business functions. And we have some of the staff here, all of the staff here actually, that were directly involved in that continuity. We needed to be sure that public safety continued, that fire protection continued, that water and wastewater functions, that they all continued. And that took a lot of rearrangement of staff and shifting of staff and going on split shifts, but we were able to accomplish that. And we were also able to accomplish that with maintaining our city offices open at all times. And the Marshall-Lyon County Library also, it was one of the few libraries in the state that remained open. Now there was changes in how they did business. There's changes in how all of us did business, but we were able to maintain that business continuity. We also had a goal of communicating well with the citizens, because everybody was uncertain about what was going on. So Dr. Steve Meister, who is not here today, he and I did, I think there was 13 videos. Chief Marshall was involved in one of those. The former superintendent of schools was involved in one of those, and that was what we found to be a very effective way of getting the current information, and then that information might change 2 days later, and we would update that. But that was an effective way of using our social media platform to communicate with our public. There are many other things you'll probably touch on here.
I remember last year when we gave the State of the City, which was March 4th, just before really the pandemic started, and the mayor said, should we talk about COVID? No, I do not want to talk about COVID. This is a public health issue. We shouldn't be talking about it. So here we are talking about COVID.
And of course, it was, when I suggested that, was about 15 minutes before the presentation.
Yeah.
So there was no point in arguing with Sheriff about that.
We did do a lot of work, but we had great partners, the county, and I have Southwest Health and Human Services up here, but the sheriff and our police chief did a lot of collaboration. And Avera was a tremendous, tremendous partner, and not only Dr. Meister with his videos, but just surge hospital planning in the beginning, and the unknown and the intelligence that they brought to the planning. And so I do want to add here too, the new CEO of Avera couldn't make it today either, but I think she's done a tremendous amount to really get the community bought into Avera, and the support is there for their continued work. They're a major employer in the city. And I know Debbie, the new CEO, is from Aberdeen, but doesn't it seem like she's from Minnesota? She's kind of got the Minnesota accent and just really got a good business sense. So hopefully we can hear more from her as she puts a few more years in here at Avera Marshall.
And of course, as we were dealing with the uncertainty of this, the health related pandemic, we were once again reminded how fortunate we are to have a regional medical facility in Marshall. So, and then, throughout the year, there was a lot of uncertainty about about our business community. And every business was impacted differently, but our total sales tax numbers are shown on the chart up here. They actually increased by 3.3% in 2020 as compared to 2019. Now that doesn't mean that every business, had an increase, some had a decrease, but the total sales receipts, retail sales activity actually increased in 2020. That's a credit, I think, to our business community and how many of them pivoted to meet their customers' needs.
Just a slide on some of our projects in 2020, even though it was a difficult year and maybe building permit data was a little bit down, we still had some pretty successful projects. The first one I just want to talk about a little bit, I don't know if there's someone here from Everspring, but we were all concerned about the future of the Ramada in that particular hotel, and late in 2020 they purchased that, and they're an equity firm out of Sioux Falls, really family driven in their roots, and one of their comments about that purchase was how great the community of Marshall is, and that they had their eye on Marshall for a long time. So we're really, really pleased to have that investment in our community, and they're doing tremendous work remodeling the restaurant and eventually remodeling those rooms as well. We did have a development in the funeral home business, and quite a bit. It was a close to $2 million funeral home development, and it looks great. It's a far greater improvement than where they were, and we really appreciate that investment in our community as well. We had another apartment building constructed on Legion Field Road, and that was to help meet our housing needs, which we're going to continue to study and see where we need to be with that in the future. And then we also did take some time last year and opened a brand new archery park not far from our Merit Center, and our Parks and Recreation has always been rated really high. This was a locally driven project. We had some interest from the archery community, and it's a beautiful, beautiful facility, and really proud that we could cut the tape on that this last year. So,
and of course, there's other investments that have been made that aren't shown up here, notably Action Manufacturing with the expansion to their business, their successful business. So lots of good activity, even during a pandemic year. We'd advance.
I may be stuck. Oh, did I go one extra?
There we go.
All right.
A little hard to, if I'm on the wrong slide, someone tell me that.
Are
I'm
we on the
talking
right
wrong.
slide, by the
Okay.
way? Okay.
So there are also some major city projects that were completed. We'll talk in a bit about the Marshall City Hall, but two of the other projects that may not be as visible to the future was the wastewater facility improvement and the water treatment plant facility. So just to talk briefly about both of those, the water treatment facility, the goal of that is roughly a $14 million project. The goal of that was to reduce the chloride levels that are going into our water distribution system, and ultimately those chlorides that are being discharged into the Redwood River. So the only way to really practically reduce the amount of salt, of chlorides that are going into the river, is to go to the source and soften the water. So that project, and I know the general manager of the utilities is here, who could provide much more detail on this, but that project is largely complete, and it is delivering water that was at 35 grains of hardness now to about 8 grains of hardness. And they're still kind of fine-tuning that, but by June 1, that will be absolutely stable at that point. So that will greatly reduce the amount of salt that each of us are purchased to put into our home softeners, and that ultimately gets surcharged and discharged then through our sanitary sewer system, gets delivered to our wastewater plant, and gets put out there. So we did receive a $7 million the state of Minnesota called a PSIG grant, based on the kind of the priority of this project. So that was, it really helped to finance that, and then the remaining cost was split between the utilities and the city. And then what I call a companion project at our wastewater plant was really upgrading a 30-plus-year-old plant to today's standards, and then increasing the capacity and also positioning it to the new permitting requirements. That project, again, is roughly $14 million. Jason, that number is correct. The roughly $14 million, and it's not yet complete. That's been a more complicated project, but it's going well. But they're replacing the apparatus while it's working, so you can't really shut off the sewage and replace pumps. So it has taken a little bit longer. But both of those projects really position the community for the future, not only for the environmental standards that we all value, but also the capacity for business and industry too. And our business and industry that we have in a regional center like Marshall is a heavy user of water and wastewater treatment. So there's a lot of science that goes on in both of those, and we're really pleased that we're to that point. Now the next step then for our homeowners is, what do we do with our home softeners? And you'll probably still keep your home softeners, but each of those are going to have to be dialed back so that that home softener recognizes that the water that's coming in is 8 grains, not 35 or 45 grains of softener. By doing that, that should reduce the amount of softener salt each of us have to purchase by about 75%. Anything you want to add on that?
The water softening project was a local contractor, so we're pretty proud of that, and wastewater had a lot of local subcontracted work. So we think it's not only an investment in city infrastructure, but it did help support our business community as well.
And then a very visible project, it was the renovation of City Hall, and Sharon can talk in detail. I'll give kind of a general overview of. We went through probably a good half dozen studies over my time about what to do with City Hall, because as we all know, City Hall, the 1964 building, had a long history of not only housing the city offices, but also at one time housing the Marshall Police Department, housing a city jail, housing a fire department, and at one point housing the city court when there was city court, and actually was the first administrative offices of SMSU. And then that building actually replaced on the same site the 1914 City Hall. So the 1964 building really needed to be renovated. A good third of the building probably was not usable because of the previous use in the garages and the deterioration of the floor. It wasn't accessible. Our city council couldn't meet there. The elevator didn't meet ADA standards. The windows leaked, and well, it just needed to be renovated. And of course, we all saw the renovation that happened, which removed the first floor to lower that so it is accessible from street level. That meant removing the basement floor and lowering that so that that was usable, and then designing it that the public had great access to the public spaces, but then staff had secure areas to work also. So we're on track now to the contractor may deliver the keys to the city by May 3rd. We'll go through a process of moving in, and perhaps by early June we'll be operational there. I'm going to say one more thing, but you want to add anything here?
You go ahead.
So I think the you know, a lot of work that went into this. There was a city council committee that was chaired by Jim Blazinski, who put a lot of time and effort and sweat into worrying about every detail. So thank you, Jim, for your leadership on that. And Sharon did a lot of leadership on that and really challenged the architects and challenged the contractors. I know that's surprising to people when I say that. So, but also added in some kind of a design flair. So even some of the design ideas, like the street number positioned at the top of the building, like it was in the 1914 building, and some of the throwback to the appearance of the 1914, not so much the 1964 building.
Right.
That was really designed into this building. Go ahead.
I think obviously for anybody who's driven down Main Street, the building kind of speaks for itself. I maybe should have put a photo of the actual building in here, but we're getting a lot of positive comments back. It's a beautiful building. I'm really, really happy we started this prior to COVID. I think we would have been really challenged to start a office complex project post-COVID, but it was really, really needed. We did, or I did rather, take a tour with someone who was in the old City Hall, and he remarked, well, surely you must have added on quite a bit of space. And we did a little bit in the front, brought it towards the street, and we added 7 inches to the wall, right, Jim? And but really, it's the main footprint of the building. And in the old building, we were underutilizing the space that we had. We didn't use the basement. We didn't use the city council chambers. So it's going to be nice to use really every square foot of that building. And I don't want to knock the 1964 building, but I suspect a lot of you, and I always use this analogy, which is probably the truth, if you're recruiting an employee, whether it be a doctor or an executive, you likely kind of shied away from showing them City Hall as you went down Main Street. It wasn't really was not a good look for us, and now I think it'll be a building you can be proud of. It's the front door to the community, and I won't be here. I don't think you will be here, but city government will be here the next 100 years, and right? You're not going to be here yet, right? So it's a good investment over a long period of time.
Mm-hmm. So 2 other things before we move on there. You know, I think we should talk about the space beside it, where the Marshall Hotel. You know, we all had, you know, hopes that that hotel could be restored, and we had a number of really good developers that looked at the possibilities and also had hopes that it could be done. But once we started really tearing into City Hall, it became obvious that that building was either going to fall down on its own or we would need to help it fall down. So we ended up removing that building, and then that has opened up space that will end up being a kind of a public plaza, a area that will be hopefully an asset to Main Street. And then one final thing I'll say about the City Hall renovation. You know, it's by the time we get all done with furniture and everything, it will be about a $7 million project. And we did this without increasing the city tax levy. And how we did that was to utilize you know, some savings that we had been storing up for this purpose. And then we issued a bond issue that was guaranteed with revenue off of Tallgrass Liquor. So Tallgrass Liquor has been exceedingly successful, and so we're using some of that excess profit and paying. That's how we're paying for City Hall.
We want to reflect back on 2020 in terms of our city brand as well. Again, last year, around the same time at the State of the City, we had a good collaboration with some community members. One was Glenn Bader from Ralco, who did a fantastic job chairing our branding committee. And if we all recall, we did hire a firm to help us with this. And this really grew out of some comments from our business community that we needed to think more positively about the city of Marshall and really try to portray that. So here I show a lot of logoed items and products, things that we did, but it isn't just about that, of course. It's about the stories and the people that are part of our community. And we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But you know, just I think a great job. The hockey arena got rebranded a little bit, new street banners. I'm sure most of you have seen the transit bus going down the street. Bob Burns was the first draw of the cultivating beer that was produced by Brow Brothers, and we'll continue to really build on this brand, collaborate with some other businesses as well. Definite need for signage. But we hope in the upcoming year to tell some more stories about how our community cultivates the best in us. So,
okay, thank you. And very quickly, we want to talk just a bit about the latest addition to Memorial Park. And I don't think I need to go into detail. Probably everyone has seen it, but it's really a beautiful addition to downtown Marshall. And many of you might remember about 25 years ago, that was a corner, well, it's the busiest corner in the city of Marshall. There was a gas station that had gone out of business. There was a lumberyard warehouse that was no longer in service. There was a concrete wall along the Redwood River that was like leaning in. So it was really an area that needed to have some attention, and it really has turned out great. And the latest Memorial Park addition, if people haven't spent time there, you really should, because it's really special. And I want to commend Mark Clay. Mark, do you want to raise your hand? Who really did a lot of work on that. And also Nate Rude representing Action Manufacturing. I think you were the one that, did you draw up? Or?
One of my guys did.
Okay, so anyway, Action Manufacturing did the wall and the sculpture. So that was all done local, and there's some really talented people that are working out there. So, okay. So we want to spend a little bit of time, and we talked about last year. Now we want to talk about next year.
Yep. So, the Aquatic Center. Do you want to start, or?
Okay, so like the next big thing is planning for the Aquatic Center. Now, the Aquatic Center, the swimming pool, 50-year-old building, second oldest in the state. We lose 12,000 gallons of water a day during the summer because it leaks. It is not at ADA standards, and we've had a couple studies on what to do with it, and but have really, I think, come to a conclusion that as a regional community, for quality of life for families, an aquatic center is important. So so we're going through the process of what would that look like. What are the components of a new aquatic center? How can it meet the needs of the users of that? So we're going to go through some study, we're going to go through some planning, we're going to go through some cost analysis to really determine the next step with the aquatic center. And so I see quite a bit of planning activity happening this year.
Yeah, it's a 50-year-old pool, one of the oldest in the state, and it's long overdue. We really should have started the project several years back, but there's a lot of work to be done in the city, and now is the opportune time to do it. We really believe an outdoor pool adds to the quality of life to the Marshall community. We think if we build it right, it'll be a regional draw. We think that right now we've got our community members who are going elsewhere, Pipestone, Brookings, and other communities farther away that really we want to keep them in our community. We're calling this the big dive on this slide because we may kind of take on some more things. We're having good discussions with the YMCA. We don't know how we'll partner with them on a pool project, but we think recreation-wise, facility-wise, we can cooperate into the future, which will make Marshall a stronger community. And there might be some other projects that we want to talk about too that we're still just kind of thinking about and bringing the community in as part of that project. So really exciting.
And the one thing I would add, this is not just about swimming, it's really about families, and we and probably many of you as you're recruiting employees, the job is one thing, but people will choose to move to the community because of the amenities in the community, and that means a safe community, that means a great school system, that means other amenities like good parks and including the aquatic center. So I think all of this kind of fits together.
Strategic plan, I want to talk about that a little bit. In August of 2019, we had a World Cafe event, great participation. We did a lot of focus group discussions too with some key community members and businesses. And we came up with 4 strategic priority areas that you see here. And 2020 held us a little bit back on some of this work, but not entirely. We did do quite a bit of progress. We're updating our housing study. We're going to update our comprehensive land use plan, which is needed. Part of the pool project was part of our strategic plan as well, and a bunch of other work that we did. So very proud, despite the drawback or the setback in 2020 of the work of the strategic plan. And it's a 5-year plan. We'll keep revisiting it and revising it as we go along. We had some things in there were maybe easily attainable, like Adopt a Park program, for example. But some other challenging ones, economic development is always, I always tell us, Lauren, it's truly a marathon. And we're in it for the long haul, and definitely will be a goal for the City of Marshall in our strategic planning process for this current one and as we go forward. One of the items I had on there before I get to this is we did form, as part of the strategic plan, was the formation of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Commission that was formed earlier this year, and that really came out of the World Cafe event that the community held in August of 2019, and our staff and the community expressed support for setting diversity, equity, inclusion as goals for the community. We know that other communities have really embraced new visitors to the community, have seen their population grow. It helps bring labor force to a community, and it just is a good quality of life factor, again, to be a welcoming community. So we did form this commission, and what we'd like to show you now is just a short video on some of the charter members of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Commission.
Hi, I'm Michelle Knife-Sterner. My name is George Taylor.
I'm John DeCramer.
I'm Ted Stamp.
Jefferson Lee IV.
My name is Joyce Tofty.
I joined this commission because after some exploration with the initial committee, exploring the possibilities of the committee, I found the individuals that were also there to be genuine, and so that's the main reason why I joined, because I believe in this work and I believe we have some genuine people on this commission.
This is more than just giving everyone a voice. We want to have everyone's involvement and participation in the city.
And when you enter into DEI work, it starts with conversations. And with conversations, you get framing and questioning and listening. Because before any action takes place, you got to build an environment of trust. And it's through this trust building that people feel free to start exchanging their thoughts. And when these thoughts are exchanged, then you get to develop initiatives, and then you start moving the needle, and then the community engages in these conversations, and then having the university take part in these conversations with the city is very vital to building a healthy community.
I see the future of it in creating more opportunity for underrepresented populations to have a voice, that we're going to be able to be more open to them and learning about what is happening through their eyes, and being able to implement change for the whole community so that we can have more equity involved in just the placement. And I believe that that will only create positive growth for the city. I believe that that is a wonderful way to exist, because it's a great community and we can only make it better by continuing with the DEI Commission.
I do see it as a place where ideas can be discussed in this area, feedback in different areas can be given, and potentially just, you have a group of people versus one person working to advocate for an issue.
People are wanting to do these steps and move forward. It's not an easy thing to set up and create and try to do, but the fact that there is that energy, and we want to see our community grow and prosper, and this is the best way, I think, in achieving that.
I'm just really excited. I'm excited to look forward and see exactly what the community identifies as needs and ways that we can meet those needs, whether it's more accessible playgrounds or more accessible entertainment, or just the needs of the community and the populations that maybe haven't had their voices heard thus far.
And the last thing I'd like to say is that I'm really excited about this. I'm excited and respect and appreciate the commitment of the mayor and the city administrators, and I believe together we can make this be a good project and good work.
The Equity and Inclusion Committee is co-chaired by Jefferson Lee, who you saw last. Jay was not able to attend today. There was a family issue came up, and then co-chaired by Joyce Robinson, so thank you. So we'll,
and she is present, I believe, so I don't know if you want to stand up or give a rave. So we really appreciate your participation, and I want to add too to that, when we had our first organizational meeting, the members of the commission were actually emotional about the progress we made by just forming the commission, and we really are just starting our work. But I was really moved by their emotional response to be on the commission. So appreciate Joyce's commitment to be the co-chair as well. So
we're going to move along. Sharon gave me the note that we're going too long. So just a quick talk about a word about where we're at with this year's construction. Last year there was. So far this year, let me state it this way, so far this year, there are as many housing permits that have been issued in the city of Marshall for new residential construction as there were in the entire last year. So we're off to a good start.
yeah.
Okay.
And this is single family home construction. Last year was a challenge in terms of single family home construction. So we're even though it seems like a small number, we're really proud of it. And we didn't give you a lot of building permit data, but we'll probably see 500 to 700 building permits when we tally up all the construction work that's going to be done in 2021. We're concerned about construction costs, of course. Everybody is. And we'll see what happens and how that influences our construction season as we go forward.
So I want to say just a word then about emerald ash borer. And I'll be very brief on this because we could talk the whole time on emerald ash borer.
You could probably talk the whole time about this.
So, but the city did adopt a ash tree replacement plan, and that recognizes that emerald ash borer, which is currently in as close as New Ulm and Brown County and Worthington and Nobles County, so it's within 60 miles of us. And eventually it will get here. In fact, maybe it is here. Usually the confirmation of the emerald ash borer in the community lags about 3 to 5 years from the actual infestation. So, but you know, the bottom line is that will kill every single ash tree in town, and roughly 60% of the forestry inventory in Marshall is ash trees. They were heavily planted following the Dutch elm demise. So we're on a plan to incrementally replace, and we're starting with our parks under the direction of, and public spaces under the direction of Preston Stensrud. So we're looking at about 10% of our tree inventory that on our public space that we're going to be replacing, and replacing them with a diversity of trees that would include disease-resistant elms, which are still a good choice, as well as other tree species that are planted here. And we're doing this on public space, including our parks, but we also recognize that homeowners may want to start thinking about that too. And one of the things we think about with tree replacement is what is that tree going to look like when it develops. And for that reason, several years ago when the bike path along Saratoga was constructed, we did identify trees. We put a variety of different trees that will be good choices for Marshall, and we identified them. So there's placards with each of those trees. So individuals can go up and down that bike trail and then see the different growth patterns, see the colors, see the, you know, what those trees actually look like once they get about, 7 to 10 years on them. So about the time that trees really start looking nice. Again, that's probably all I want to say on that. Sometimes, as Sharon knows, I don't know where to start, and worse yet, I don't know where to stop. So we better keep moving here. So the other thing we want to talk briefly about is that next year is Marshall's. You want to say the word?
I didn't rehearse this word, so you better say it.
Yeah, it is the 150th anniversary of the founding of the city of Marshall. So that's a cause for celebration. There's a committee that's in place. They actually are looking for more involvement in planning what should be a meaningful celebration in 2022.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, this concludes our presentation, but I want to say a few words about this slide as it's our last slide. It was a slide that was presented last year, and I think it's a good way to tie in 2020 and 2021. There's many different ways that we contribute to the community, and I think some of those taglines up there are really important to us. And when I think about Marshall community, I think about, people. It's people and it's stories. We, had a young couple that decided to make Marshall their home. And tomorrow, their son, Trey Lance, is going to be a National Football League player. And that's just truly a testament to the community itself. We've gotten a lot of recognition just because of his talent for the city of Marshall. I also think about, tomorrow Ralco is going to celebrate their new innovation farm, and to think about, how they all started 50 years ago in the garage of Bob Galbraith, and not only that, but how their family has continued it on. Truly a testament to cultivating the best in us. We've got Runnings here, who their store started on Main Street in Marshall about 70 years ago, and in the last decade or so have really, really expanded. They have over 70 stores now across the nation. I think they go into Canada too, and so just a lot of great stories. We really want to use this as another springboard to kind of kick off profiling different community members and how they've cultivated the best in us. And as we leave here today, you know, just kind of think for yourself, what can you do to contribute to your community and cultivate the best in others? So,
and as we talk about people, you know, it is about the people, and that's really what makes this community successful. And you know, I recognize one other person, Bo Erickson. We probably saw him on the CBS News, you know, during the height of the pandemic when he was broadcasting nationally from his parents' living room. So with
that's
that,
your neighbors.
well, we'll be, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
So and as Sharon kind of concludes this too, we certainly want to thank everybody in this room for your contributions, and that's why it's an honor to serve.
All right. Thank you.
I guess we open up for questions. Thank you.
We can give them a round of applause, can't we? All right. So we thank you to those who did send in questions for Sharon and Bob. So we have about 10 minutes to go over these. So
It looks like you got about 3 pages of
my
questions.
gosh, I got things all over the place here. I've got cords hanging out and everything else. So the first one's a two-part question. With the economy rebounding and increased employment and job openings, many of our local businesses are struggling with very low unemployment and more job openings than applicants. What can our local bodies do to help bring in more applicants?
Well, I'll start with that. You know, I think that's a challenge not only in Marshall, it's a challenge in Minnesota, it's a challenge across the country. And there's probably no right answer, but I think we look for marketing opportunities. And one of those opportunities may mean, you know, marketing our community, especially to those areas that people want to move from. You know, you've seen a lot of turmoil in you know, some of the metropolitan areas. People are experienced now with telecommuting and really working from everywhere. And we do have excellent Wi-Fi in Marshall, and those, you know, for both work and education. And there may be some marketing efforts that might be, or virtual job fairs that might be targeted to some of those areas where people are concerned about safety, and some of that might be the metro area. Some of that might be Sioux Falls, where there's some concerns about safety also. So I don't think it's just, you know, as I mentioned earlier, you know, people come for the job, for the, you know, expect to pay, but it's more than that, you know. And so putting the banner on the trailer saying $13 an hour, come work for us, it's more than that.
Right.
I think of, you know, regional, statewide competitiveness. I think that's a really important issue. Christy Nome did not only advertise in Southwest Minnesota, she's advertising in Chicago. And I think we really need to kind of beat that back a little bit. It would take a statewide initiative. I think that will help us. I do think post-COVID, or whatever you may call it, it has been challenging for finding labor. It is a national issue. Part of it may be unemployment benefits, which have been critiqued. And, you know, unfortunately, part of it is some of these employees who may have had to transition to something else during COVID, they have now transitioned entirely to a different position. So some of our service industry labor is really, really going to be challenged. I do think some of our businesses have done a great job. Turkey Valley Farms, for example, if you look at their pay rate, if you look at their social media productions, they're giving incentives, they help employees find housing, they try to build that community support when they bring employees in. So I think they're a really good role model. But the community itself too can help. The city infrastructure is always a big thing for us. We think that's important. The quality of life. I'm never going to move to Sioux Falls. I know never is a long time. I'm not going to do it. I like this area. It's a safe community, as we know, and commuting patterns are a lot less here, and I think just advocating this quality of life, like Bob said, in terms of marketing why we're great in this particular area is really important.
And the second part of that, you talked about advertising a little bit, Bob, but how do we, there's an option to incentivize people to move into our community as well? That's the second part of that question, for more and better jobs.
Well, and that's, you know, I'm not sure I have a good answer for that, Brad.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, I understand. That was a kind of a tricky one. How do you see the local economy rebounding post-COVID?
Well, I think the, you know, the expectation is that later this week, maybe even tomorrow, the governor is going to open things up. And while we say that, you know, our total retail sales have actually increased by 3.3%, that's not across the board, and that certainly does not include the hospitality industry, the bars, the restaurants, and that additional capacity will be very welcome for that. I think they all want to do it in a safe way, but they need to have increased capacity. I think that will be an important step on rebounding. I think people are, in general, want to be safe, but they also want to, you know, get back to what will be normal in the future.
Yeah, I think each year, unfortunately, businesses come and go. Consumers drive the business sector. They're 2/3 of what makes or breaks a business. And I don't see 2020 into 2021 really being that much different in terms of transitioning from businesses that were alive and well in 2020 to 2021. And you know, during the middle of 2020 was really concerning when Mike's Cafe temporarily closed down. This is an iconic establishment, long roots, and in the city of Marshall. Was, you know, we were worried, what's next, who's going to be next, and what does it mean? But you know, you go there on a Sunday morning after church, you can't find a seat. So they've done really well bouncing back. It's a credit to our community, the consumers, but the businesses themselves, they've been resilient. So I really think it could be a lot worse going into 2021. I'm just so impressed with how the businesses have really pivoted during last year to do you know, really well in 2021.
I got one final question, and it's a really good one. So we talked about a lot of projects, especially upcoming 2021. But if there's one community need besides the projects that you did mention, what would that be that you'd like to see come to Marshall?
Well, I think we've always focused on jobs and economic development. So whatever we can do for, you know, job creation, new investment by employers, and recognizing that, you know, Marshall's a community that grows from within. So whatever we can do to support and incentivize our local employers, we should do.
Yeah, and I think, again, the quality of life factors are really big. We're actually going to get another infusement of federal dollars. It's the American Rescue Plan. We're going to be thoughtful and careful about those funds. It's about $1.5 million. We're likely to do a survey of the community to get some feedback on how those funds are expended. The county's going to receive $5 million. If we can partner with them in some capacity, that would be really helpful. But, you know, thinking of quality of life, again, it gets back to Parks and Recreation. What are some future projects there could enhance our community? We know that entertainment venues were especially hard hit in 2020. Those, you know, how will they fare in 2021? I'm not entirely sure. Is that an area where the city could step up and make a contribution to the community? I think so. And I see that as maybe a future project area, even though we don't quite know what that might be.
Great, great. All right, that's all the questions I have. I sure do want to thank you, Mayor Burns, Sharon, for sharing their highlights for 2020 and their vision for this year. Thanks again to all of our sponsors, and thanks for everybody here for being with us today and supporting our efforts. If you're interested, we do have some Live Local shirts out front. pick up a shirt. We have some staff out there that are willing to sell you a shirt or a coupon book. Tomorrow night, as Sharon mentioned, there is a business after hours at the Relco Research Farm just north of here, not too far actually. So that's from 4:30 to 6:30. So before you get settled for the draft tomorrow night, come on over and join our friends at Relco. So again, thanks for being here. Have a nice rest of the day. This meeting is adjourned.